Stop whatever you're doing. Please watch the first minute or two of this video. Do yourself a favor. This is extremely important. There's a new law in California, crazy California, right? There's a new law everybody needs to know about. If you live in California, the United States, or Canada, you should really pay attention to what I'm about to say next. I'm going to break it down. I'm going to go over some numbers. We're going to get into depth on this, but there is a new water law that is basically setting some guidelines for the water districts in California, saying that the average consumption for one person per day needs to be limited to around 55 gallons. So there's a lot of false news that's been going around. The news and other TV agencies have been putting out there that basically it's 55 gallons a day and that you can't take a shower or a bath and do your laundry on the same day, or you'll get hit with $1,000 fine first time, and repeat fines can be up to, I think, 10,000 a day, or some crazy number. So there's some false information going around. However, it's still not good news. So this is extremely important. I'm going to get into this into some depth here in a moment. However, I want to let you know you really need to look into this, and you need to raise a stink. This is why it's so important that those of you out there that actually don't care about politics, don't care about politicians, eventually you will need to, because they'll ruin every aspect of your life. You need to pick a side. Whichever side it's on, you got to pick a side. It's like a war that you can avoid picking a side for so long when it's in the distance, but when that war gets to your footstep on your doorstep, you're gonna have to pick a side, or you're gonna get rumbled right over. And that's what's happening in California right now. There's a Democratic controlled supermajority. They've been in control of this state for the last 20 years, and they've ran it into the ground. So I'm not trying to say Democrats are bad, but obviously when they have complete control and they get to do what they want, they have lunatic policies. Needles in San Francisco, poop in San Francisco, poop in the streets, homelessness everywhere. It's getting bad in California, folks. All right, I want to go over what the state recommends for the standard to be set out for this new law. The state is recommending that the standard be set at 55 gallons per person per day. And then I want to look out, well, what does the standard person use per day? You know, what do we use on a daily basis? And looking at it here, we've got 30 to 50 for bath, 25 to 40 for laundry, 4 to 20 for dishes, and 100 to 1,000 for garden, 1 to 3 for pets, 40 to 50 for washing hands, 1 to 2 to shave, and then 80 to 120 to use the restroom per day. Now, I don't know if using the restroom per day is taking into account the fact that we have washing hands and flushing, or if that's just multiple flushes added up throughout the day. I tend to believe that's counting washing our hands as well. So either way, we're looking at, without a garden or watering of the grass or anything, we're looking at least 200 to 300 gallons per day per person. So the state's recommending 55. I don't think they're going to go with that. That's the recommendation. I think the water agencies are going to be about 75 to 100, and I'll get into that next and explain why. Okay, now I want to get into basically what's going to happen with this law. So the law is proposing that the limit be set, at 55 gallons per day per person. Now, what I believe is going to happen is that's not really going to be the most achievable rate. So I think the state says they're going to work with the water agencies to try to achieve the best possible standard. So I'm assuming that means they're basically going to shoot for 55, but I do believe they understand that's probably going to be quite a bit unrealistic. So I don't know where they're going to be. I think it's going to be somewhere between 55 and 100 gallons per day per person, with fines up to $10,000 per day out of compliance. Now, here's the deal. The way that it kind of works is the state goes down to the counties, who then control and work with the water subsidies and jurisdictions, who then provide that and sell that to you, the consumer. So the $10,000 per day out of compliance fine is actually, so part of the misinformation is people were being told that the customer was going to pay for that. However, in the law, the water jurisdictions are going to be the ones to pay for that. So you don't think the state's going to actually go after the county, do you? So the state's not going to go after the county. They're one big circle. They're one big group. They are not going to go after themselves. They're going to go after the water jurisdictions. Now, the water jurisdictions cannot take a $10,000 fine per day. That is sinkum. No business can tolerate that. So the water jurisdictions here are going to go ahead and pass that fine down to you, the consumer. You are going to be the one who's paying for this. That's why it's so important that you pay attention to who you're voting for, what their politics are, and what do they propose. And also, you really have to read into the fine details, because something can look good and sound good on paper, but have big ramifications against what you're actually trying to achieve. And one big example would be a push to conserve and save water has led to a big change in how we water and take care of our crops. We used to do what was called flood watering, where when we grow corn, cotton, tomatoes, even trees, we would flood the orchards and then let the water soak into the ground, and then you'd water maybe 4 or 5 days later, a week, depending on the temperature, depending on a bunch of other factors. Now we're much more efficient, and we're doing what's called drip irrigation. And what that's doing is it's actually drying the ground table out, and the floor of the Central Valley is sinking in, because we're pumping more and more water out of the ground during dry years. But during any year, normal years, we're not normally putting the water back into the ground like we used to, especially since the California Central Valley, a lot of it was actually kind of a wetlands originally. And then once we started damming up these rivers like the Merced River, Tuolumne River, Stanislaus River, and creating all these lakes, New Melones, Lake McClure, Lake Don Pedro, and all these other lakes, the Central Valley would pretty much flood. And so we are now changing our ecosystem when we change our water practices. And so please also, hate to go on a rant or a tangent, but when you see a law that says we want to save water and conserve water and save the earth, I mean, everybody thinks of Greta Thunberg and yay, you know, let's save the environment. But it has these really huge impacts that we really need to understand before we make these big changes. So with that being said, I'm going to go ahead and continue on. All right, now why did I say if you live in the United States or Canada, you should pay attention to this video? Well, the reason is because California usually leads the nation and the world in what they're doing. So California makes the law first, and then it comes to you guys shortly thereafter. Sometimes it doesn't, but most of the time it does within 5-10 years. So you guys better watch out, better pay attention. And those of us in California, it's too late now. The only thing we can do is cause a stink and kick the bums out that are elected in there now, and put some people in there that'll change these laws and make that part of our pact with them. Why we elect them is that it's not just because whether they're Republican or Democrat, it's just do your dang job. So with that being said, thanks for watching this video. Don't forget, we have a big giveaway at 100, 500, and 1,000 subs, and we'll see you on the next one. Thanks for watching Common Sense Talks.